This video is looking at the paper 2 reading exam. This is the non-fiction Gcse English language, the Eduqas exam board. So this exam will last 2 hours, 1 hour for the reading and 1 hour for the writing, and this video is just going to focus on the reading. If you have extra time, 25% extra time, you'll get 2.5 hours or 1 hour 15 for the reading. Like I say, we're going to focus on the reading in this video. So details of the exam are as follows. Is section A of the paper is worth 30% of your whole qual. 1 hour should be spent on the reading exam. You're given 2 extracts and you have 6 questions to answer in total. The examiner comments from November 2019, things students, grade 3 students in particular, should have done better or could have done better to get grade 4 and above are: too much time spent on low mark questions, more quotes needed, focus on specific words and say why the writer has used them, and you need to use quotes from the whole text. I'll talk more about that during the video. So to get a grade 4 you need around 18 out of 40. On the 10 mark questions, that makes about 4 out of 10. So like I say, you get 2 extracts. Both will be on the same theme. The theme of this exam paper is prisons. This one is the 21st century one. And you get a 19th century one as well. As you can see, the 21st century one is normally about 1.5 pages and it might have a few pictures, and the 19th century one is around 3/4 of a page. And it works out as question 1 and 2 are on the 21st, 3 and 4 on the 19th, and 5 and 6 are looking at both texts. And in this video, people looking for grade 4 to grade 6, you get 2 easy questions where you've got to find information from both texts. Then in question 5, you have to do it for both texts, find information. And then question 6, you have to find information as well. And you have the option of doing PEEs. And question 2 and question 4, the how questions, where you need to do PEEs and try to talk about 6 to 10 quotes. And here they are in a bit more detail. Feel free to pause the video if you would like to. You must time manage, so 3 to 4 marks is about 3 or 4 minutes, 10 marks, 13 to 15 minutes. If you're doing an hour exam, 10 minutes or so should be reading and 15 minutes to do the questions. I won't be pausing the video to read the extracts. So if you want to download it and look on the internet, just go into Google, type in June 2017 Eduqas, and you should be able to get it. So question 1. Question 1 is the simple question. It's 3 marks available. Should spend 3 or 4 minutes on it. Do not write a PE, but write a full sentence. So it's basically information retrieval. So you'll get 3 questions and you've just got to find the answer. So for example, if we look at it, okay, give 1 example from the article about how the worst prisoners were punished. And then somewhere in there it says they were forced to work in silence. B, at the time the article was written, how many prisoners were there in Florence prison? Again, try and find it, and it tells you it's 439. And then it says, give 1 example of the privileges that prisoners may earn for good behaviour. And again, find it, and it says they may be given mirrors, radios, and so on. So here are my answers. They were forced to work in silence, 439 criminals, mirrors, radios, and televisions. I would always, if possible, try to write a sentence. So question 1 is very simple, just it's comprehension, finding information. If you can't find it, leave it. There's no point spending 5 minutes wasting the time looking for 1 mark. So if you can't find it, just leave a gap and go back to it at the end of the exam. Question 2. Question 2 will always be a how question. So 13 to 15 minutes, and you should be looking to do 7 to 10 quotes. This question is, how does Mark Benelli's article try to show that prisoners in Florence live in extremely harsh conditions? And you can talk about the language and what he says, tone and structure. 10 mark question. So what we mean by harsh conditions is, how does Mark Bonelli make the prison seem tough or difficult to live in? So the how question overview, it's exactly the same as paper 1 how questions. Explain why you picked the quote and what the words mean for the reader, and use as many examples quotes as possible in 13 minutes. I've said to do 7 to 10 quotes, but realistically it's how many you can do in 13 minutes. After 13 minutes, if you've only done 3 quotes, you move on. You don't spend 25 minutes on one question and get behind in the exam. Track through the text, meaning make it clear to the examiner that you've read the whole text. Take quotes from all over the place, not just from the very start or very end. And again, quotes equals marks. So these two people were actually quite similar in terms of how good at English they were, but the person on the left had only done a few quotes, but the person on the right had got into their head, if I do lots of quotes I'm going to get lots of marks, and that's why they were successful. This question is all about where a writer deliberately or on purpose uses words to achieve a special effect on the reader, be it make the reader frightened, excited, interested, so on. So you're going to zoom in on keywords and think to yourself, why has the writer used them? So for example, if we had a sentence, he walked down the stairs, and then the sentence, he crept down the stairs, by changing the word, the writer has just presented the man in a different way. What is the writer trying to say by changing the word to crept? So this is a man walking, okay, and then this is an example of crept down the stairs. So what was the point of the writer doing that? Well, the word crept suggests the man is trying to walk down quietly or not be noticed at all. So we're zooming in on the word crept, we're zooming in on that verb and say, what's the point of the writer deliberately using that word? Again, if it said she punched a man, and then a writer has added the adverb forcefully to the end of the sentence, forcefully suggests she punched a man with a lot of power. Force equals power. Okay, again, he awoke to a raging, howling storm. If the question was something like, how does the writer present the weather? If we look at the words raging, what does it mean? Well, raging means angry. What does howling mean? It might mean that we can hear it. Okay, the use of the words raging and howling makes the storm seem angry, alive and punishing. So those red and those pink words link together. Okay, another example from a different paper 2 exam. This question was about a teenage boy sailing around the world. The question was, how does the writer show that Mike Perham's voyage was really tough? Here are some quotes that we had. Mike had huge blisters on his hands from day one. Okay, the word huge, the adjective huge has been used from day one. Why did the writer bother telling us that? Well, huge blisters on his hands from day one tells the reader he was in pain, but all the way through his trip. Another quote, Mike did the trip solo. Why has the writer bothered to tell us that he did the solo? Well, solo makes it tough because it means he did the whole trip alone with no help from others. Another example, this is from an exam paper about 2 men who did a tightrope over Niagara Falls, over the waterfall. The question was, how does the writer make it seem dangerous? The drop was 30,000 feet. This was life or death stuff. If a gust of wind came, I would fall. I was trembling. So look at those 4 quotes, and if you want to, pause. And how could you answer the question, how does the writer make it seem dangerous? Well, let's look at each one. 30,000 feet means the fall would kill him instantly. Life or death means he will die if he makes a mistake. It is so fragile that even a small gust of wind would make him fall. That's the point of the writer putting gust of wind. And trembling, this shows it's dangerous because he was so scared he was physically shaking. Again, almost be like a human dictionary. What does trembling mean? It means shaking. So let's make that link. So like I say, be a human dictionary, pick out certain phrases and say what they mean. So another question that we looked at was an extract from Jurassic Park, and the question was, how does the writer use language to describe Tyrannosaurus? One of the quotes we picked out was the greatest predator the world has ever known. So we're going to zoom in on the word predator. You be a human dictionary, what does it mean? Well, a predator is any animal that hunts, kills and eats other animals. The writer could have put the greatest dinosaur, the greatest animal, the greatest hunter. They've chosen to use predator for a reason, and the reason is to show the reader that the dinosaur is going to hunt, kill and eat other animals. So let's put that into a PE. Example PE, The T-Rex is described as a predator, which shows it will try and eat and kill other characters. I'm almost explaining to the reader what the word means. Okay, so back to our question. How does the writer show that prisoners in Florence live in extremely harsh conditions? So you zoom in on, look at the article, and you're going to zoom in on any words where the writer deliberately uses words to make the prison sound tough, hard, or difficult. This is the text we're looking at. So like I say, if you've got the exam paper, try to find 7 to 10 quotes. These are the quotes I found. America's most violent and evil criminals. It is known for its harsh conditions, incredibly small cells, sleep on concrete slab topped with thin mattresses, tiny single window only 4 inches wide offers just a glimpse of sky. Prisoners are never allowed to come into contact with other prisoners. Hallucinations and memory loss. Solitary confinement can be shattering. This place is not designed for humanity, and a clean version of hell. Then what I got my students to do was look at these quotes and highlight the 1 or 2 words in each quote you want to analyse. So if we look at 5, 6, 8 longer quotes, if I'm writing those in my answers, I'm not going to write out the whole quote. What we're going to do is we're going to zoom in on 1 or 2 words and explain why those words have been used. So if you want to pause the video, these are the words that I would concentrate on in the exam. So for example, if you look at number 4, I don't want to write out the whole sleep on concrete slab topped with thin mattresses, but I'm going to zoom in on the word concrete and I'm going to zoom in on the word thin. Okay. So let's look at a few answers. How does Mark show the prisoners live in harsh conditions? My quote is incredibly small 12 by 7 foot cells. My answer is the word incredibly shows that Mark is amazed by how small the rooms are, because incredibly almost means it's something amazing, something marvellous. Okay, so there we go. The word incredibly shows that Mark is amazed by how small the rooms are. There's my quote, and that's my point where I'm going to say how it makes the prison seem harsh. It is known for its harsh conditions, so why is the writer bit it is known? Well, this suggests that the prison has a reputation for being tough. Okay, now your turn. Have a look at the video, have a look at the quotes and see if you can write a few PEs. Pause the video and see maybe if you can write a couple. So here are my ones. And again, if you want to do it yourself, pause the video and see if you can write some quotes based on these. So sleep on concrete slabs topped with thin mattresses. They're sleeping on concrete beds with thin mattresses, which must be very uncomfortable. That is the reason why the writer has told us. So concrete is almost like it's like sleeping on rock, and thin mattresses shows they haven't really got any the mattresses aren't going to be thick enough to stop the pain of the slabs. If you wanted to, you could go into deeper into the word slab. What normally is on a slab or a piece of meat, so you could talk about that a bit more as well. Remember, it's much better to have lots of lots of quotes and writing a little bit on it, as opposed to only 1 or 2 quotes and writing a lot. So tiny single window only 4 inches wide offers just a glimpse of sky. And I put the word tiny emphasises how small the window is, and glimpse shows the prisons see hardly any of the outside world. Sorry, I was meant to say prisoners. So glimpse shows the prisoners see hardly any of the outside world, just a glimpse, just a little bit. Again, be that human dictionary. What does the word glimpse mean? America's most violent and evil criminals. Okay, it didn't have to put most. It could have said they have some of the America's evil criminals, but they put most violent. So what's that telling the reader? Well, it's the word most means the prisoners in Florence are the worst in the USA. They're worse than any other prison in the USA. Prisoners are never allowed to come into contact with other prisoners at any time. The word never shows that prisoners do not even have the freedom to speak to other people. There are no exceptions. So never shows us that they're never allowed. Not on Christmas Day or not when their family come, they're allowed to see other prisoners. They're never ever allowed to see them. Hallucinations and memory loss. Okay, this shows the harsh conditions because it means some people develop mental problems. This place is not designed for humanity. This is harsh to suggest the prison is not made for humans. They're almost being treated like animals. Okay, and here are some exemplars that if you want to look at. These are past student work. Again, if you want to pause the video, have a look. This one got 5 out of 10. This got 8 out of 10. Okay, question 3. Okay, so question 3 is very similar to question 1. It's just on the second extract, which is the 21st century one. Okay, so again, it's just comprehension, it's just finding the information. So don't get stressed, it's from the 19th century. They normally will be quite easy to read, so treat it as the same way as the 21st century one. So here's the text if you want to stop and read it. And the questions are, when Charles Dickens visited the prison, what did he describe as awful? And give 2 details from the text that suggest prisoners are there for a long time. Okay, so A is he describes the silence in the cells as awful, and B, give 2 details suggest they're there a long time. We could have, it says it's prolonged for years. It says the person that was there for 10 weary years, and at the end they say he grows old. So you've actually got 3 things there, but you only needed to write 2, and there you go. You can write them down like this, pretty simply. Again, write a whole sentence, don't just put one word. So for example, for A, don't just put quiet, because you won't get a mark. Again, if you can't find it, you leave it. You don't spend 5 minutes looking for 1 mark. You just go back to it at the end of the exam. So if you say, for example, you can't find A, leave a line gap for A and go back to it at the end. Okay, question 4. So question 4 is very similar to question 2, but it's on the different extract. It's 10 marks, so it's 13 minutes and 7 to 10 quotes. The question is, what do you think and feel about Dickens' view about solitary confinement as a punishment and the way he expresses these views? So in other words, it's a how question where you could say, how does Dickens get his views, or how does Dickens show his views on solitary confinement? I guess the key with this question is you are specific. It's asking you for a specific thing, solitary confinement as a punishment. That's what you've got to focus on. You don't focus on the whole prison, just solitary confinement. So it's basically the same as question 2. Okay, so you look at this extract, pause the video if you want, and you're going to zoom in on 7 to 10 quotes where the writer is speaking about solitary confinement. That is the only thing you're focusing on. So here are the quotes that I picked out. Cruel and wrong, rigid, strict and hopeless, torture and agony, prolonged for years, no man has a right to inflict upon his fellow creature, tampering with the mysteries of the brain to be immeasurably worse than any torture of the body, humanity should not allow, buried alive, solitary horrors. And there it is, a little bit bigger. Obviously, they're all bringing across the fact that Dickens thinks it's a completely and 100% negative thing. So if you want to on this question, you could do a little intro, maybe summarising that. But don't waste time on it, because you're not going to get many marks, because you need to do quotes, quotes, quotes. That's how you're going to get your marks. Okay, so the first one I've done is cruel and wrong. Remember, the question is, what is he saying about solitary confinement? So I put, firstly, Dickens feels solitary confinement is cruel and wrong. The reason why I'm showing you this one is you get marks with your quote. If the quote is ridiculously simple, don't bother with a PEE, just put your quote into the sentence. So it can't get much simpler, can it, than him literally saying it is cruel and wrong. So if it's really obvious, just put it into a sentence like I have. You don't need to explain. On this one, you wouldn't need to go, this suggests blah, 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 because it's so obvious we don't need to explain it. Next one, rigid, strict and hopeless. Again, obviously we know it's power of 3, it's rule of 3. However, you will not get marks in this exam for just going, that's rule of 3. You've got to explain why it is effective, and I haven't even bothered. All I'm zooming into is what words have been chosen and why have they been chosen. What is Dickens getting across by using rigid, strict and homeless? And I basically said this shows Dickens thinks solitary is tough. Yeah, rigid and strict maybe means tough, and doesn't benefit anyone. So hopeless meaning it doesn't benefit anyone. The quote is torture and agony. So I put torture and agony tells the reader he thinks it's a negative and painful experience. Again, that's what torture and agony is. If you link what are the connotations of torture, it's pain, punishment, and that's what he thinks of solitary confinement. No man has a right to inflict upon his fellow creature. Again, quite a long sentence, but I'm going to zoom in into the word creature. What is a creature? Well, it's something that's not human. It's something that is a monster. I've put creature suggests he thinks the prisoners aren't being treated like humans. He is a man buried alive. Okay, what have I put about that? I put buried alive suggests he's dead inside and no longer feels normal emotions. Dickens is making the point that although the body is still going, the men have internally, mentally switched off because of lack of communication with other people, and that's what solitary confinement does to people. Again, here are some exemplars from past student work. If you want to pause, have a look. This one got 4 out of 10. This one got 5 out of 10. One thing I'll notice from these exemplars is basically the people who have used the most quotes have got the most marks. So don't get too swayed by the fact that a bigger writer, a bigger amount of writing gets more marks because they've written more. It's actually that they've used more quotes. So this one did 6 out of 10. This one did 7 out of 10. Yeah, but if you look at the answers, they're not actually too much more convoluted or complicated. They're just using more quotes. Yeah. And that one got 9 out of 10. Okay, question 5. Okay, question 5 is very similar to question 1 and 3, but this time it's for both extracts. So it says, to answer the question, you must use both texts. According to the writers, how do the cells in these prisons add to the prisoner's sense of isolation? So again, the question is quite specific. All you're looking at is looking at the cells, the prison cells. How do they make the prisoners lonely? So question 5 info, it's the same as question 1 and 3, but it's for both texts. The only difference is you're now going to put it into a paragraph, so it's not split into A, B and C like questions 1 and 3. This time you're just going to do it in a little paragraph. You don't have to compare in this question, so we don't need you to put however, in contrast, blah blah blah. And you don't need to do any PEE, so just find the information, put it into a paragraph. However, you need to make it clear which text you're talking about. What I would do for this would be just use the names of the writers. So Benelli says, Dickens says. If you don't make it clear which text you're talking about, you'll get 0 marks, and that goes for question 6 as well. So all you're doing in this question is, how do the cells in these prisons add to the prisoner's sense of isolation? So you're going through both texts and looking or highlighting any quotes that tell us anything about the cells making the prisoners feel lonely or isolated. That is basically the question. It's only a 4-mark question. You're only on it for 5 minutes, so don't waste time. Get your answers quickly. Okay, here we go then. So Dickens says the silence of the cells is awful and they never see another human apart from the guards. Benelli says the men never see each other and they're there 23 hours a day. Again, I'm not doing PE, so I'm not going, this is awful, this suggests, or this is trying to tell the reader. All I'm doing is finding the quotes and putting them into a sentence. You'll notice the question is out of 4, and if you look at my ticks, I've basically got 4 quotes. My quotes are in the blue. So I've got 4 quotes equals 4 marks. If you could in the exam, you had a bit of time, see if you can find 5 or 6 quotes, but at the minimum, find 4 quotes because you need at least 4 quotes to get 4 marks. Okay, the last question in the exam is question 6. Again, you are looking at both texts, and it's worth 13 minutes, and try to do 5 to 6 quotes. It's worth 10 marks. Both of these texts are about solitary confinement in prison. You need to talk about just the solitary confinement. You're not talking about anything else. You're just talking about solitary confinement, and you're talking about the effects of solitary confinement. If your student is looking for grade to 4 to 6, I would ignore the second bullet point. I would ignore how the writers get across. So I wouldn't make these answers PEs. If you're someone who's looking for a grade 9 or 8, you need to do your PEs, but my students were looking for grade 4, 5 and 6. All I want you to do is find the information, okay, and I'll explain that more now. So you don't need to do PEs if you're looking for grade 4, 5 or 6. So for example, don't put just put the information. You don't need to then do your explanation. So you don't need to give a quote and then say the writer suggests, or this is the writer is trying to tell us, or this is giving emphasis to the fact, blah blah blah. I just want you to get the information. Just find the quotes the question it's asking for and put into sentences, and try to see if you can do 3, 4, 5 quotes for both extracts. So 3 or 4 from extract A and 3 to 4 to extract B. Again, you need to be clear which text you're talking about. If you're not clear which text you're talking about, you'll get 0. This is a 10-mark question, so that would be a disaster. Okay. Again, I would use this structure. Benelli says, Dickens says. This is the names of the writers. Don't worry if you feel like you might be repeating yourself from past questions. You can use past answers for this question. Remember, by this stage in the exam, you'd have read both extracts, so you're just skimming information. So again, we're looking at solitary confinement, the effects of solitary confinement. So you need to find quotes that talk about the effects of solitary confinement, and only this in the both extracts. So what I mean by that is what's happened to the men since being in solitary confinement for a long time. Okay, so here are the quotes I found for Benelli. He said, many prisoners routinely go days with only a few words spoken to them. That leads to hallucinations and memory loss. It can be shattering, can often lead to more violent behaviour, and someone calls it a clean version of hell. Okay, Dickens says, daily tampering with the mysteries of the brain to be immeasurably harming. The immense amount of torture and agony. He never hears of wife and children, home or friend, and he says being in solitary confinement is like a man buried alive. So now I'm just putting into sentences. I'm not doing PEs, I'm just putting them into sentences very similar to question 5. Here are the 2 quotes from both. I'm now going to put into sentences. Okay, so Benelli says, many prisoners routinely go days with only a few words spoken to them, and it leads to hallucinations and memory loss. He also says it can be shattering and often lead to more violent behaviour. It is also described as a clean version of hell. Okay, and here it is with the quotes. Okay, you'll notice that I'm not really comparing. All I'm doing is saying what he says and giving the sentences. If you're looking for grade 9, you need to compare a bit more, but students looking for grades 4 to 5 to 6, remember this is the last question in the exam. You will be struggling for time at this point, so just get your quotes down and you can get at least 7 or 8 out of 10 just by giving the quotes. Here's the same for Dickens. I've just put the quotes into a sentence, the quotes I found a minute ago, and here they are, the quotes. Again, I've just put them into a paragraph. I'm not putting this suggests. I don't want to waste time. I want to get my 6 or 7 out of 10 by just giving the quotes. Okay, and here they are together. Okay, so there again, a lot of these are just quotes. It's out of 10. You can get to 7 or 8 out of 10 just by finding the quotes that talk about the effects of solitary confinement. So my best tip for you is don't waste time doing PEs. Get as many quotes as you can. Quotes equals marks. Okay, if you want to do it like this, a bit different, I've done a bit more comparing. So I've started my first Benelli one by saying Benelli says a number of negative things about the effects of solitary confinement. Then I've done my quote, and then I've just started my Dickens one by saying Dickens agrees that solitary confinement is very negative. So I'm just showing a bit more of a comparison there. So you could do that if you wanted to, might gain you an extra mark. However, if I was you, I would stick to this one. Just find the quotes, find exactly what the person wants you to find. By that I mean the examiner. Okay, final tips, time manage, okay. Do PEs on question 2 and question 4, i.e. the 10 mark how questions. Do lots of quotes. If you're doing 10 mark, try to do 7 to 10 quotes. If you're doing the last quote, the last question, try to do 5 or 6 to quotes. Move on to the next question when your time is up. So 5 minutes for a low mark question and 13 minutes to 15 minutes for a 10 mark question. I hope that's been helpful for you. Good luck in the exam.